Welcome to our podcast. This is Real Talk with Mary Contrary and Starfish. Today we're diving into the democracy erosion agenda outlined in the 2025 Mandate for Leadership document, aka Project 2025. So today we're going to explore how these proposals might reshape the democratic processes and threaten the integrity of our institutions. We're also going to examine the roles of key figures and institutions in protecting democracy during the 2020 U.S. presidential election, focusing on election integrity, military neutrality, the role of the Department of Justice, and the security of mail-in voting.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know, isn't it? Like, it's just... I mean, we've had to, kind of like section this all out because it's such a huge document, but I just really want to make sure that we are giving everybody, the breakdown information that they need to make decisions based on this. I just think it's really important, especially right now with the election coming up. So that leads me into my next little thing that happened this week. It looks like Mr. Paul Dans, if you guys remember from our previous episode, he's the director of the Heritage Foundation. He evidently stepped down his role this week, so he's no longer the director of the Heritage Foundation. And I do think it's a move made by the Trump campaign. I think they're trying to distance themselves from this document. So yeah, it's like now they're all
Keep trying.
Yeah. And my guess is he probably received a lot of like hate mail and stuff, like he probably received a lot of hate from people when they are, because people are starting to research this more, thank God.
Yeah.
And like read a little bit more into what they're proposing. So
I think he's the director of the Project 2025, and there's some other guy who runs the Heritage Foundation. I just Googled that. I think I'm right.
Okay.
But nonetheless, him stepping down was totally, I agree, it was really great and symbolic of how Trump does not want to be associated with this. And despite that, everybody knows that a lot of Trump's ideas had to have come from here. And then, of course, we all know Paul Dans worked for Trump. So the idea that this somehow solves it is like, well, I mean, honestly, you and I know, because we discussed it in the last episode, that this mandate for leadership is produced every so often. It's been produced 9 times. So I doubt they're just going to stop. I think it's just because Project 2025 has like a scary sounding, like it's a science project.
Right. Yeah, so it's like they're trying, I know they're trying to like soften this thing. Like they're trying to, it's just so funny to me how they're just trying to take the spotlight off of this. It's like we're gonna make it sound so we're gonna have to make it sound like it's a less of a, burn on America. Like we're gonna try to, make it sound legitimate for the voters. It's like they're just trying to, I guess they're just trying to make it sound like it's less than what it is, which we're going to break down, because obviously we know that it's basically they're trying to turn this into basically a dictatorship, in my opinion.
Oh, not even a question. Not even a question. A dictatorship that is run by Mr. Trump or somebody, but Mr. Trump is who they're trying to get in there right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, this whole thing is a scam to get to be more like Russia. Let's be more like Putin and
right,
Kim Jong-un and
right,
all the dictators. No, let's not be like that.
Right. Yeah.
But there's some sort of this let's just have dad take over and run the country. We all screwed up. Haha, us silly little liberals. What did we know? That's what it feels like a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just, it's like, well, no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
I think we're
Exactly.
good. And
Yeah.
despite how bad it is right now, it would be 10,000 times worse if
Right.
Trump became president. This is our democracy. This is our right to vote. This is our right to participate. This is our right to choose, and we're going to lose it. And I don't think people realize how important that is, how much you actually want to be able to choose. Even if you like Trump right now, you're not going to always like him. And as soon as he becomes president or dictator, it's going to get worse. His attitude and his brazenness with everything, getting away with murder, being immune, give me a break. It's all just going to be. So democracy to me is, you're voting this year for democracy, not just for Trump versus Kamala. Who cares about any other issue, frankly?
Right.
But this is the number one issue.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I think starting with this is good. We were going to continue with the education, but this one's just so important.
Yeah, I agree. So, why don't you lead us into the Starfish, this the Department of Justice control over election appeals, because I think that's really kind of scary that they're trying to overtake that right.
Totally. So right now, as you all remember from 2020, there was all kinds of appeals on election issues, right? So if there's some sort of dispute about a vote and whether it was counted correctly, I guess is the correct way to say it, especially if it was, something went wrong with the vote, there was a way to appeal it, and it would go through an office called the Civil Rights Division, because voting is a civil rights issue. So that's why I went through civil rights. What this document is proposing, however, and it's sneaky, is first of all, it would move Civil Rights Division, it would move election-related offenses and appeals from the Civil Rights Division to the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, which sounds weird, doesn't it? Why would we make voting a criminal issue? It's just a weird.
Yeah.
But the reason they're doing that, it's a weird issue. Why would you do that in the first place?
Yeah, that is so bizarre though, like moving it from that so it's like it's a crime to vote. Like that's what it makes it feel like, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like,
and if you
moving
don't vote exactly right, you're going to jail.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's like, I mean, that just sounds like Russia and North Korea right there, right? Like,
it is. It's a total attempt to depress the vote. They don't want us to vote. They're like, ladies, don't worry about it. Gay people, we gotcha. Like, don't worry. We're gonna take care of you, like they have in the past.
Right. Right.
They
exactly.
try to suppress the vote as much as possible. They don't want immigrants voting like they do anyway. Like, they don't vote. I don't know what that issue is. They don't want poor people voting because they know they'll vote against the rich people. There's no get out vote on the Republican side. That's never a thing. There's never like a get out the vote, go vote.
Right.
They don't want us to vote.
Right. Right. They don't.
So that's a lot of their argument, is that they want to be able to keep that power, because they claim voting isn't a right, that it's a privilege. So
okay, that's
it's
totally against our democracy. Okay, Republicans.
Right.
Got it.
So if it's a privilege, then this is why they've been trying to get rid of you have to use an ID, like have to. Well, a lot of cities and states and municipalities who do the voting, actually run the voting, which it's like a state level thing. They were like, well, not everybody has a driver's license. Not everybody drives, so how else can we identify them? And the Republicans said no, because they don't want to be able to have these people vote. They're like, why are you voting? We don't, and so they think it's some sort of protection against fraud is what they think, even though there's just so little evidence of voter fraud. We all know this.
Right.
now that 2020 happened. Even though, again, if you ask somebody who's on that side that would say, well, Biden isn't the legitimate president, they still think that. So.
We have a special announcement for all of our podcasting friends and aspiring creators out there. If you're looking to elevate your podcasting game, check out blueberry.com. With their top-notch services, you can take your podcast to the next level. Plus, we've got an exclusive offer just for our listeners. Use the code STARFISH at checkout to get a special discount on your subscription. Don't miss out on this great deal. Visit blueberry.com and use the code STARFISH today. Right.
So the reason they want to move it over to the DOJ is because they want to move the DOJ under the president. So that's in their sneaky move. Let's move voting, election fraud issues under, or election related issues under the DOJ in one section. And then in another section, it says, oh, and let's move the DOJ completely under the president. So that the president can essentially decide who's going to be the president. Right.
If you guys listening today don't see how terrible of a plan that this is, I really don't know what to say.
To clarify, they're a cabinet level position. So they already speak, the AG, the Attorney General. So Bill Barr at the time, and now it's Merrick Garland. They, of course, work directly with the president, but they don't necessarily take cues from the president. And that's where this document really, it's already essentially aligned, but this document really says, no, it needs to be very aligned. Like everything they do should be for the president's agenda. And I just don't, that's not keeping the power separate. It's not a checks and balances. So does that make sense? Just to clarify that it's really not, I don't want people to think that it's moving physically. It's not like it was over here under the vice president or something, and now it's moving under the president. No, it's always been a cabinet position, but it's just it's supposed to be an independent body. And that makes sense. It's supposed to be the attorney for the country, not for the president. And that was another thing Trump had a little bit of a trouble struggling with, the difference between my attorney versus the country's attorney, So I just wanted to make that clarification for everybody.
So I do have a question on that, Starfish, because I'm just trying to understand from the viewpoints of others. So what you're saying is it's not he's not having it like the DOJ physically move under him, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't worked in government or maybe at worth cabinet level, I don't know if people know what that means. I don't know, but like vice president, essentially, but it's just basically the people who have reporting or have a big division, a big area, a big department, and they need to just executively tell you what's going on with their area. But those people are not usually elected. A lot of the times they're selected by the president, cabinet members, which makes sense. That's fine. But not all the people that work for them. We'll get into all the people that work for them. But, he chose Bill Barr. You can choose your AG. You can't tell the AG, I want you to prosecute this and not prosecute that. The AG is like, wait a minute, you don't tell me what to prosecute. I decide. But this document, I mean, this is a quote directly from it. Ultimately, the department will have to make tough calls as it manages its litigation, but those calls must always be consistent with the president's policy agenda and the rule of law. That's the second thing. But it must always be consistent with the president's policy agenda. And if you go to organizations like the American Bar Association, what we all know, the American Bar Association, they have said no. The DOJ needs to be very independent because you can't use the DOJ for your own benefit. That's exactly what the Heritage Foundation, the mandate, Trump want. They want control so that they won't prosecute them and their friends, right? So It's just essentially saying, no, we disagree. We do want the DOJ to only do what we tell them to do. Must always be consistent with the president's policy agenda. Oh, and the rule of law.
So they're basically just trying to tell them how to do their job, right? Wow.
Like, why even have them? You're basically just want a puppet in that role then, in every role.
That's totally crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like this unless we're like talking like third world countries here or dictatorships.
I know. I'm surprised they put it on paper.
Yeah, it's like, well, we're just going to be all wordy with this so that people, people don't like, it's like they're like, oh, well, people don't read, so we're just going to play on that, Well, some of us do read. Some of us do, in fact, read, folks. So here we go.
They totally bury it too. It's like the DOJ moving is like at the beginning of the document, and it seems like such a great idea. They really argue it, and they're like, yeah, let's move the DOJ up under the executive branch. But then as soon as you read toward the end, like in the 800s, they're talking about how effective it would be to have election-related issues under the president. By moving election offenses to the criminal division, the DOJ under the president's leadership can more effectively address voter fraud. It sounds like such a great idea. They make it sound like such a great idea, and then they just bury it in the document. Nobody's going to read till page 800,
Right. I mean, I don't know if you've all ever had like your phone, like if anyone's ever read their phone contracts, for your cell phone. But it's like a document like that, it's like all this little sneaky crap that these companies put in their documents. Like,
totally.
It's just like this. It's just insane to me. Like all the little stupid stuff that they put in there and like move it around. And then they think that everyone's just so dumb. They're not going to see anything of what they're trying to do. They're like, we're just going to put this out there, but we're going to word it. We're going to get real, lawyer wording on this, to make so like all the simpletons of the US can't figure it out. Like, come on.
I've heard a lot of people say it's so hard to read. Is there a summary somewhere where the bullet points? And I totally get it because I struggle with reading it, and I'm like a total academic nerd on this stuff, So I'm like,
sure. Yeah.
They did make it long and complicated. And it is baffling as to why they put it out there in the first place. Like, isn't this your secret playbook? Because this, I joked around at first about how they called it a fascist manifesto. It is. This is the fascist manifesto. How do we get normal people pushed down, and rich people running the country? That's exactly what this freaking thing is. Let's get rid of democracy. We don't need it. What do you think fascism is? That is fascism. I don't know. It's just, that's annoying. They just don't like the word. Well, sorry, that's what you are.
Because because it associates them with the Nazi party, and they're trying to distance themselves from that. But it's like clear that that's what you guys are doing right now. You're becoming Nazis. 100%. So
exactly. And call me a socialist all day. Sure, I am one. But you don't want to own fascism because it's a terrible movement.
Right.
Dictatorial center, autocracy. Essentially.
Right.
Forced.
Yeah. Well, that's what they want. They want Trump to be. They want autocracy with him. That's all they want.
Yes. Yeah. Let's have granddad run the country. That's how it just feels so like. What do you little girls know? What do you little people know? It just feels like that. It really bothers me. So we're going to show them what we know. We know everything about what y'all sneaky mofos are up to.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're doing now. I mean, we're going to break all this down into little sections so that you can see how they're going to break down democracy, because that's exactly what this is. This is their playbook. As soon as he gets into office, if he's voted in, these are the things that you're going to lose as an American.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to lose your rights.
Yeah.
Folks.
Yes.
Like, that's why this election is so important, and I really hope that there are people listening that are, they're trying to get more information. They're trying to learn a little bit more, and I hope that we can bring that to light, so that people can make informed decisions on what they want. So
yeah, because I think if people don't know about this, they just think, oh, what's the harm? He's already been president. Mary Contrary, didn't you know that? He's already been president. He'll be fine. He's not going to hurt anything. He's not going to take away our democracy. I don't know if anybody else remembers January 6th, but I do.
right.
They tried to take it away. So what's interesting about this is that if you all recall, Mr. William Barr, I think a lot of people do remember him if they saw his face, but his name doesn't ring a bell. But he was the guy who was like a Trumper and he was the leader of the Department of Justice while Trump was in office. And he said during 2020, like, I don't see any evidence of election fraud. I just don't. He's kind of an old school Republican. I think he worked under Bush or Reagan. Like,
okay.
Maybe not Reagan.
Wow.
That's a little too long ago, but
yeah, probably Bush
Jr. W.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So Bill Barr. So do you remember that during the election that he came out and said, like, the Department of Justice said, we don't see any fraud at all.
Right.
So that's why they want to move the DOJ, is because they're like, oh, well, if only we hadn't had somebody like Bill Barr, who's very respected conservative amongst conservatives,
right.
That there was nothing. There's nothing there. Why are you saying that this happened?
Right.
He specifically said there is no evidence. To date, we've not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome of the election, is what he said. So I think I actually gained a little bit of respect for him, but that's why they want to move the DOJ under the president, as this whole alignment of these processes, because remember, that's the deep state. He's the deep state. He made this decision, and Trump wants to be like the CEO. He doesn't want shared governance. He doesn't want checks and balances. He doesn't want these things. He wants it just to be like, well, I said I win, so therefore I win. Why aren't you on my side?
Right.
And so he wants people around him that'll just toe the line, And
Exactly.
Bill Barr wasn't willing to. And a bunch of people weren't, who we'll talk about as we go through this. And some people did shitty things that they shouldn't have done. But
right.
This is one guy that we can actually point to and say, it's hard, but good job, Bill Barr. I'm not a fan of you in any way, shape, or form, but you did do that. And because of that, now they want to move the DOJ up under the president. So this is why. This is the story that really contributed to that, was Bill Barr saying there's no election fraud and I'm not going to prosecute anything. And that ticked Trump off. So.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I remember that, because he basically didn't have a case then.
Yeah, there's no case. I mean, we went through the cases. I went through the cases so tight. I followed those cases so closely. I wanted to know exactly what was going on. And it was just like, maybe there's one or two or even 50 or 100. And they just don't realize, even if there's 100, that doesn't sway the election. It just doesn't. It maybe will push it a point or two. And it will call for it. It'll maybe push a recount, but a recount isn't gonna, you have to have tens of thousands of votes for it to change in most places where they thought, like Atlanta was one place. I mean, there's, how many people live in Atlanta? I don't even know. 500,000.
Right.
You have to have a pretty significant number of people who cheated. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the DOJ appeals scariness in this document. I think that's a pretty freaky thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, because that really was like, think about all the Americans that have sacrificed themselves to, just for the right to vote. Like, just think about that. The women's suffrage, their whole movement. So this is like the undoing of all that, of all these
Oh,
people
yeah.
that have sacrificed, some of them their lives, just to get a say in voting in this country. And I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's only been, what would you say, Starfish, like the last, what, 100, maybe 60 years?
100 years.
100 years?
100.
Yeah.
Yep. Women
And
were
so,
allowed to vote in 1920, I believe. Yep.
Yep. So we're undoing like 100 years of American history with this. Like that's just crazy to me. Moving something like it's like, I don't know. It's just so crazy to me to do something
Right.
like this with our voting right. Like it just blows me away. So I don't know. I don't know where this country's headed, but this is why we're doing this. Like we're breaking this document down by each segment of it, just so that you guys can stay informed. So that's what we're gonna do with each of these little sections. So if you guys will please keep listening. In our next episode, we're going to continue the conversation about the erosion of democracy. But until then, stay safe and stay informed. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Real Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. We look forward to having you on our next one.